I wanted to move into kind of private practice and just have something where there was flexibility for me to stretch into like really getting to figure out, right? I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do as far as like kind of focusing in with private practice and being able to work with clients a little more freely. But I knew that that was what it was. I was like, I need just some more flexibility without constraints of systems and organizations and rules, that are there, that I get why they're there. But they were the things that were constraining me from really being able to like be flexible with, the knowledge and experience and expertise that I'd gained over the years. And so I knew that that was the direction. And so, that was where I started, was just like, that's where I want to go. And then building on that of like, what does that even mean to build a private practice? And, who could I connect with to learn of just the littles of starting out to moving to get that for me. But just really focusing on like, that's what I needed. I knew like there was just a sense of grounding and a sense of trusting my core self, that like, even though there was fear and there was anxieties and nervous, that like there was just this core knowing as I was developing this internal relationship of like, yeah, you're still on the right path, kind of keep going. And so that was like really helpful to know like that was the direction.
Do you have a hunch that life could be better, that you're missing out? Life could be more fulfilling, happier? Today, we're talking with Annie Olsen-Meehan. Annie shares how, as a child, she loved helping people. So after she graduated from the University of Kansas, she went on to a career in social work. On paper, her life was great. She was working in low-income schools, helping students of color, and she had great bosses who were really supportive, gave her flexible arrangements to take care of her kids at home. She had salary raises and a team. But at the same time, when she would go home to her beautiful family, she felt something in her gut, that something was missing. In Boss Mamas, we talk about trusting your gut, and that means listening and checking in with your body. It might sound woo, but that's actually what Annie does in her social worker therapy practice. And this practice is what Annie actually uses for herself through journaling, checking in with her body, and then creating a plan based on what her body was telling her. She ends up leaving her career and moving to start her own practice. This is such a great story because it's inspiring to see someone start to trust themselves and then create a life that's one of meaning and fulfillment for not just work, but also her family. I can't wait for you to meet this boss mama. When you were a kid, Annie, what did you dream you'd be?
I grew up in a very small school. The school was kindergarten through 12th grade, all in one building. And so, as you move along, it's very small. You have a lot of people that you're interacting with. But I had a school counselor that just really made a huge impact on me throughout that time. She was there the entire time from when I was in kindergarten up until I graduated. And she just made a huge impact. And I realized that she was kind of what really focused me in on a helping profession.
So sweet. I can't imagine going to a school, the same school from K through 12. Like the
Yeah.
kids you meet when you're 5, you're going to see, through prom. That's
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Different.
Annie, I went to like 8 schools just to share my background about why I'm so amazed. The same school, K through 12, and the
Yeah.
same kids and the same spot. So that's
Yeah.
incredible. And plus, then you have this counselor who has seen you throughout as well. So do you remember a time with her that was particularly meaningful?
Yeah, I remember kind of in elementary school, I was going through a point, I think it was around 5th or 6th grade. And, I was having some girls that were kind of being bullies, not really nice, doing a lot of things that were really affecting me. And I remember she really just was there. I was able to go to her, and not only did she, sit and listen to me and support and just be there for me, and with all of it, but she also took action. She really made sure to sit down and bring in some of the girls, and even I think put together like a group at one point to really have us figure out what was going on, why were these things happening. And so that was just really huge, not just to have her be there and support me, and really listen, but also do something about it and really be able to help out with just a tough time.
That's so nice because often I think as kids, for me at least, I didn't have a lot of people to talk with about bullying or mean girls. So it's great that you had her and that she not just listened, but she helped you problem solve. And it sounds like she got a group going too.
Yeah, yeah, she did. Yeah.
So that's great. So then what got you then to decide to be a social worker? How did you decide on that path?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that kind of influenced me doing something in the helping career in counseling. And, I didn't really know much of like what that meant of degrees and all the options out there. I just kind of thought, oh, psychology, because that kind of just was the broad term that people thought. So I kind of, decided that was, the direction, because that was what counseling was. And so, we have like a college day or career day that you can go to, like your senior year. And so I, went to the campus to go, and they have different, places to visit. And I went to the school of psychology to visit, and I wasn't really, it just didn't really fit. And I was like, well, that's kind of strange. I felt a little like, oh, well, disoriented a little bit, because I was like, well, that doesn't really fit for what I was looking for. But the guide or tour guide, or the person that was there, was like, well, maybe you should check out the school of social work. And I think I had a misconception of social work, from TV shows, and they take your kids and they do these things, and so I was kind of like, well, I'm not sure, but ended up going to that one and sitting down and just being amazed at like the broad applications for social work. There's so many different things you can be and do as a social worker, and that just really felt fitting. And so that day I was like, well, this is what it is. This is what I was like needing and wanting to move into.
It's great when you can actually find the thing and your heart just says, this is it. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. So then you find yourself moving from your little town. Why did you end up moving? What was that about?
Something in my gut told me it was right to do and try this out and go to New York.
Nice. So I'm fast forwarding, and that's when you and I meet, and we're starting the school together, and it's intense and awesome.
I felt very fortunate to be a part of it, right? Because it was a newer school, because it was so small. It was like all hands on deck for me. It was like bigger than what I kind of expected going in, and so it was, and getting up at 5 a.m. and getting on the train and then having to switch 3 trains and get there and being gone, and yeah, getting home late. And so it was a lot. There was a lot to have to take on.
I mean, also in that those hours, it wasn't about the hours back then. I remember just being so purpose driven that what we were doing each day really mattered. And I was really honored to be able to serve these amazing communities and kids. So it was, one of the highlights of my life. So I wanted to make sure that we shared that, because it is definitely not a knock to that time, but it was a special time. We didn't have kids yet, and it was beautiful and awesome. Yet, wow, I look back and like, wow, we were powerhouses of getting things done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, really making a difference of like really, figuring that out, being mission driven and a part of that, all together.
Absolutely. So Annie, we didn't talk back then about what you were feeling in your position as a social worker, because there were so many rules that we put in place for our beautiful kids. Tell me about that. Tell me about from an expert as a social worker serving kids. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I was very mission driven, and there were so many aspects of the school and everything about it that were, great. And I love the ideas around it and ideology of helping. Though it was really difficult, many times being, because I did sometimes feel like an outsider. Social workers, kind of where we come from, and like especially like our ethics and what we're taught, as our education of like serving, different needs and being able to be flexible, really serving a multitude of layers of mental health needs. And that was not necessarily able to be implemented in the school at any point that I was there. And so that was really difficult because the focus was really on, education and serving, which I felt very, grounded in and agreed and felt that was important, though there was an aspect that always felt missing there for me of, there's more to this than just having the education for our students to really be able to know kind of what their mental health needs were, what they needed, not just for themselves, but for their families and their communities.
I hear that. I remember we were trying to pack so much in during a day, everything, and double blocks, triple blocks of reading and math, and trying to get kids caught up to where they needed to be. So and having a long day, right? We had an extended long day for the kids so that they
Yeah.
could get in more,
Yeah.
more. And yet the mental health wasn't a place we valued it, but we couldn't invest as much as we would have liked.
Yeah.
So do you have an example, Annie, about a child so that we could just better understand what you would have wanted to do versus what we were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a particular student that comes to mind, and I, met with him and worked with him when he started in kindergarten, and was there with him up until, he was almost in fifth or sixth grade. And just had a lot of emotional needs. I came from a family that just didn't have a lot of support systems in place, a lot of support within the family or the community. And, he really struggled just even getting into the school building. And so he there was just a lot of difficulties. And with him, what I remember, feeling and thinking was the constraints around all that scheduling, right? The day to day, the blocks that like it felt constraining to like figure out how to make that work. And so, I would feel very stuck and like, okay, well, we'll just create like a behavior plan because there was not the ability to be flexible with like spending more time really working with the teachers even and how to understand and identify what was going on. And so that time constraint and the everything else that was going on with the day to day, there just wasn't the ability to really focus in on what he was, needing for support. And he just continued to struggle, and that was really difficult.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. Our kids are so deserving of more, and how to pack it in is tough.
Yeah.
So with that, then Annie, you're having this experience that you'd want more for our kids. And what did that mean then for you?
Yeah. That meant something felt missing. For me, I didn't feel settled into what I was doing with serving students and their needs and the families as the bigger picture. I just wasn't really sure where my place was with really as a social worker and what I felt was an identity around social work, as who I was, and feeling a very unique dynamic of like I mission driven. I really want the education. I feel that, but there's just this piece that I'm just not able to attain and get to with helping for these students. And so I felt very stuck with what I could do and what I was able to do to help and support.
Did that feeling of stuck, what can you describe more what that felt like?
Yeah, if I really try to reflect, I can feel it, kind of still feel it resonate in my gut. Like it was just this gut feeling inside my body of just like, this isn't enough, and, sometimes I could be hard on myself and be like, well, you need to be doing more, kind of that inner critic voice that can come in sometimes, but just realizing like, gosh, I feel, like there's nothing, right? Like the structures and the limitations within what was able to be created within the school and timing. So that felt stuck and felt like, there wasn't the allowed time and ability to go into it, but also like there was something more there. There's something more of I knew, I had a knowing, I guess is the word, a felt sense that like there is more that I can be doing, but I didn't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. That feeling of stuck and then realizing it was in your gut. Did that like a meditative practice? What was the thing?
Yeah.
Walk me through, what did Annie do?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, kind of how it looked, back then. I think of like back in the day when I was a little younger and had more time. I didn't have kids. I think it was like even just like on the subway ride home, where I would just really kind of sit and reflect on like, okay, so what is that? What is showing up for me? And so it wasn't a specific practice at that time, but more just a really checking in with like what's going on, right? What feels off, and what is it? Is it a very, is it a quick fix? Like I just need to do this thing, or is it, more of a like mental shift of sitting into like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this the
Mm.
place that's really like gonna be fulfilling for being able to settle into serving, kids and families in the way that I wanted to be.
So it's like a checking in with body and
Mhm.
noticing, and then asking, what's that about? Is
Yeah.
it something that I can handle now, or is it something I just really need to lean into and listen more? Because it might
Mhm.
not be, it might be telling me something that it could not be wrong fit. It's right now the wrong fit. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so what did you do? Did you take action? You mentioned you didn't have kids yet. What
Yeah.
happened from there?
Yeah, I think, I was there for about 7 years. And so and did end up having my son, at a certain point while I was still there. And that definitely made a big shift for me. I kind of was already kind of like, oh, what? And then, had my son. And so that was, I think for me, a really big, kind of like had forced me to look myself in the mirror and be like, okay, really, really pay attention here. You've been kind of talking to yourself and checking in, but you haven't really leaned in. You've just been kind of keeping it on the back burner. But now is really like a focus of, oh gosh, there's this little human being, and I just wasn't spending any time. I wasn't able to spend time and be present in the way that I wanted to as a mom. And leaving at 5 or even sometimes 4:30 in the morning and getting home at 6 or 7 o'clock, at nights. And I was just like, okay, I gotta do something. So I really had to lean into that uncomfortable of like, okay, what's really going on here, and what really do I need to focus in on? And so it really was a moment for me of focusing into that uncomfort and fear of change, and why I was fearful of changing, and checking in with that part too, in my gut of like what was keeping me from actually leaning in, like why was I scared to lean into changing something? And so when I did that, I was able to like really reflect and bring that back to my husband, and figuring out like what's going to be best for us as a family.
So you notice this feeling, you have your son, you have this intense schedule, and that is what picks you over the brink to say, I really need to dig deep. There is something that's not working here. I'm not sure what. And you then talk to your husband. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then is that time for change now? What happens from there?
Yeah, that was time for change. I mean, lots of discussion and figuring out what that change looked like. I knew that I was also missing being home. Home for me, Kansas, back with my family, and doing that. And so that was it. It wasn't an immediate change. Obviously, just because of my husband had a job, and we had to kind of also figure out what was going to work right. Doing that change, but I knew the change was going to happen. For whatever it was, even if it wasn't a move, I needed to shift. I had to find something else that was going to be more fulfilling, for all aspects. And so lucky that was able to shift and get me to work and have an opportunity to move back, to be closer to my family.
So you make the shift, your husband's all for it. You're now back in your home state, and sounds like then you got it all made, right? What happens there?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I was able to come back and had an amazing opportunity to work at another school here, and dive in, and really the CEO was fantastic. I mean, she really let me build what I wanted to build within the social work department. I was hired on as the senior social worker, and really just given flexibility, in that position. Everything that was like for me, like I wasn't able to kind of like work or move into, at the previous place, was like, please, opened up and given me this open door to really be flexible with like how I was able to serve the students, and how to build a whole mindfulness curriculum and adapt that and work with teachers. And so all these excellent opportunities were just provided and supported, in just an incredible way at this position at the school, which was similar position, but just totally different in the like adaptability, even flexibility with scheduling, everything.
So you now have flexibility to run the program you want.
Mhm.
You are now a senior social worker, so you have a team of people that can help you. You have flexibility to work from home, and imagine she really wanted you, so you're happy with your salary.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, Annie, don't you have all the things? Like, aren't you happy now?
Yeah, I mean, I did have all the things. I did, right? Like it was all the things written down that would be like, yeah, these are the external things that you're like, check all the boxes. And so yeah, you would think on paper it was excellent, but it wasn't. There was still just something, that gut of like, there's still not. It's not. I'm not there. Like what is it? And that was honestly a little confusing for me. Kind of like, well, I've gotten, like these are all the things that I was kind of like, ooh, externally, if I have this, that'll make it better. And it wasn't, it just still felt like that missing, there's something missing. And, continuing to be like, gosh, I'm getting all these things, I'm getting the things that feel like right and able to best serve, as far as on paper. And there was still just that place where I was like, it's just not, still something's not right. I'm just still not feeling like the click of this is, you know, whatever we want to call is balance, right? Like, there's no perfect balance, but it just didn't feel like I was still able to be fulfilled all around, as a mom, as a wife, and as a career person, and knowing there was still something there that just wasn't fitting.
I mean, I've got to slow it down here because this idea of something's off, something's not quite right.
Mhm.
It's not, it's like a normal thing to feel that, right? There's like more out there. There's a hunch, there's something. We can't really put our finger on it because when you look at the boxes, we've checked the boxes. Like
Mhm.
everything should be hunky dory now. We've done all the things that make us happy, but yet there's something that's missing. So how did you go from an inkling that that's how you're feeling to, oh, actually, there is something here?
Mhm.
Was there a moment? Was there a breakdown? What happened?
Yeah. I didn't really have like a breakdown or a specific moment, though. The students that I've been working with were high school, and the first class of students, it was also, still kind of a younger school. And so the first class of students were getting ready to graduate their senior year and go off. And these students, had developed such a strong relationship with many of them over the course of the 4 years that I had been working with many of them. And I just remember that sense of like there, especially in that last few months of them going off to graduation and watching them graduate and walk across that stage of like, so proud of them and excited of like their future, and so many of them going off to this next part of their life, and the excitement they were feeling and that energy I'd feel from them. And then realizing, gosh, that's what's missing. Like there's that energy and excitement of like what they're going to do and what they're moving into and towards. And it was just kind of this like unsettling but also settling feeling of, okay, that's it, I got to do something different.
Mm. I'm imagining the kids graduating, and it's such a huge moment to be with kids for so long and to have a milestone like that to celebrate, and then connect to realize that the thing that they're excited about, you actually don't have.
Yeah.
So you have this realization, and your
Mhm.
body's been giving you that hunch for a while. So what do you do as a result of this aha moment?
Yeah. So I decided to take my own advice, to make it simple. It's a great advice to be able to say, well, what did I say to some of these students, or what would I say to a good friend, right? Like, can I listen to the advice I give to others? And so that's what I did. So I really took some time to really sit down, and reflect. And reflect was a lot of different things. I would sit down and journal, and just really write down, what was coming up for me, paying attention to, again, not just like the thoughts, but also what was I noticing in my body, right? Like that gut feeling, where was it showing up? And really pausing at each point, whether it was a physical point or a thought, and really stopping to kind of imagine, like, can I just listen with some compassion and curiosity, just like I would with somebody if they were sitting in my office or in my, in a therapy room with me? Can I really just listen to what's showing up versus just letting it come and then getting caught up in it? Can I really create some space to listen to it? And then, so I did that, and it wasn't necessarily easy, but as I did, I realized what was showing up was really had some really important things to show me of like, you need to move into this, and what was the fears, and then checking in with the fears of, hey, you need to move into something where you can be more free, more flexible, and really getting to work with people in the way that you want to work with them.
So I'm imagining this because if I were listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, well, I have a similar hunch that something's off, that I'm not as excited as I could be, that maybe I'm not as fulfilled as I could be. And I get out of my journal and I sit down and am I checking in with my body? Like, what does that look like if I were your client and you're trying to help me move through that? And I'm like, I got my book, I got my pencil. Like, what am I
Right.
like? What questions should I be asking myself? And how do I check in with my body? What does that even mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Like, what do you want me to like? What is this?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. And what I would say to like a client is like journaling can look however you want it. It doesn't have to look like what maybe we grew up doing in writing and journaling. Sometimes it can, but it can be drawing. It doesn't always have to be words. So it really is however you experience whatever it is. But what I'd say is, is sit down, have that journal. And again, don't have an agenda of that it needs to look or have a certain thing to it, that it needs to be anything particular, but just start, right? Sometimes that has to be with a little meditation of sorts of like, can I take a deep breath and really check in and notice what's happening? And notice can be physical sensations. So checking in like, oh, I'm noticing, tightness in my chest, or I'm noticing, my jaw's tight. And so just drawing that or writing that, just even going there. And then if you can check in with that, sit with that for a minute. Okay, well, when I notice that and I check in with that tightness in my chest, what thoughts come with that? And then maybe write that down or draw that, right? The thoughts might be like, ooh, I'm anxious and I'm nervous, or I'm scared and I'm fearful. Okay, so then that's where then it's the curiosity, right? And I
Mm.
get curious about why that's telling me I'm scared. Can I really understand and try to listen to what's it scared of, or what's it anxious, or what's it angry about? And just being able to really try to be that, like, that friend, right? That just friend that's going to listen and just really be there and hear what you have to say. And so just asking, right? Like, okay. So then again, with the journal, just writing that down, drawing a picture, whatever shows up. And then that way you're just starting to give a little bit of separation, right? Really paying attention to what is going on, versus letting it all just kind of run, get stuck on a cycle. I'm really slowing down and paying attention to what my entire system is trying to tell me.
It's so interesting that the way in which you're framing it, the answers lie within,
Mhm.
that your body is telling you to listen. And if we could only pause.
Mhm.
And it sounded like you just committed, because often we're running ourselves ragged. There's such busy schedules and things to do and stuff to buy and people to take care of, that the commitment you made was to have space
Yeah.
and sit, and without any pressure on yourself to deliver like a dissertation, just sit there
Yeah.
and see what comes up. It's great, because if you're connected to your body, there could be a lot of sensation. And I find, for me, I'd be curious for you, Annie, mine often comes with my stomach, especially fear, or
Mhm.
anger will come from like my chest. And or I'll be nervous about something and I'll find my back cringe. So there's a lot there that my body is telling me without me even knowing that I'm thinking it, right? It's just a body sensation that we're often so busy. And sometimes I think choose not to want to lean into because it's uncomfortable, right? Like, is it
Absolutely.
fun
Yeah.
to be like, what's my stomach cringing about? Oh, I'm scared. Okay, let's dive into it because it's fun to look at fear. Like, that's not fun.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you leaned into that fear and you encourage your clients to lean into it because there's insight there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's so much insight there, and exactly what you said. It can be scary to lean into some of those, right? Like,
Mhm.
it can be scary to, ooh, well, do I really want to explore what the fears are and what that scared and anxiety, because we're that comes with, we don't want it to overwhelm us, because that's what is happening already, right? Those feelings and emotions already are overwhelming, and the fear is if we turn into them that they're going to take up more. And so I get that, it can be scary.
So it's interesting because in many ways there's comfort in the discomfort. So, for
Mhm.
example, you have this life for you. I mean, you checked all the boxes, it's pretty comfortable, and yet you're feeling like something's missing. So there's discomfort, but it's comfortable, right? Because at least you know what you know.
Yep.
And then there's my life's crazy and I want it to change, but there's also comfort in knowing the craziness. So either way, there's like a comfort with whether your life is like padded or it's not padded. There's comfort in knowing, and there is discomfort in exploring the unknown
Mhm.
because you don't even know what you don't know. And to take a jump is scary. It's super scary.
Mhm.
So let's walk through that then, Annie. You realize through this soul searching, and you're your therapist for yourself, which is really cool. And you see that that you need a change, that this isn't it. So what happens then? Like, it's not, did you take a leap? Did you talk to your partner? Like, what happened when you had this
Yeah.
aha moment?
Yeah, I definitely, spoke with my husband and, about kind of where I was with that, and exactly, like it was comfortable. It was easy. I was, good, and I was getting all this, but it was like, that's just not fulfilling. And so, I didn't just jump into, making a shift right away. I have a planner in me. And so I was like, I kind of want to think this through a little bit of how this looks, but I was able to start making those changes because that was what felt safe for me. It felt safe for me to step into taking the baby steps, but the baby steps I knew were what needed to get me there. It wouldn't have felt safe for my system to just jump right in and do it all. And so, that was where I started. I started to do those things and really just continue to doing that, checking in when I notice a fear of, like, oh, that's not safe, or that feels, like you don't know, you're jumping into an unknown and uncertainty, and checking in with what that fear was of it. And again, having the great support of my husband and my family with it too, definitely, was helpful. Though just continuing to do that check-in, just constantly checking in. Not always journaling, not always have the time to sit down and journal, but just, okay, I'm noticing that in my chest. Because even now that when I was doing that, checking in, and still do, just being aware when the body sensation came up, oh, that's my anxious part, right? It can help just being able to acknowledge and validate that it's there.
The watcher.
Yeah.
So you're talking with your husband and you tell him that you need a shift. So did you know what you wanted to shift to? Like, walk us through those steps to getting to then where you are now.
Yeah, I think I knew that I wanted to move into kind of private practice and just have something where there was flexibility for me to stretch into, like, really getting to figure out, right? I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do as far as like kind of focusing in with private practice and being able to work with clients a little more freely. But I knew that that was what it was. I was like, I need just some more flexibility without constraints of systems and organizations, and rules, that are there, that I get why they're there. But they were the things that were constraining me from really being able to, like, be flexible with, the knowledge and experience and expertise that I'd gained over the years. And so I knew that that was the direction. And so, that was where I started, was just like, that's where I want to go. And then building on that of, like, what does that even mean to build a private practice? And, who could I connect with to learn of just the littles of starting out to moving, to get that for me. But just really focusing on, like, that's what I needed. I knew, like, there was just a sense of grounding and a sense of trusting my core self, that, like, even though there was fear and there was anxieties and nervous, that, like, there was just this core knowing as I was developing this internal relationship of, like, yeah, you're still on the right path, kind of keep going. And so that was, like, really helpful to know, like, that was the direction.
I love that. It's constantly checking in and also realizing that anxiety and fear are, you hear it, you accept it, not, don't fight it, and trusting, still trusting and checking in.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you made a plan. You figured out how to do it. You lean into your private practice. And how is it going now? Do you feel like, what is your gut saying to you now when you check in with it?
I love it. I feel just, I'm totally in a different place. It just feels so, grounding, but also, like, freeing, because I'm just, I really am, able to be flexible and really get to follow the direction of helping, in a way that feels right for me, that really feels right for, like, how I approach the world, how I approach my life. I don't feel like there's a disconnect of, like, how I am in my personal life and then how I am in my job. I'm like, they really kind of not always seamlessly, but pretty seamlessly go and ebb and flow. And so it's just a totally different, feeling, and groundedness, and having the two, kind of worlds be together and work together.
If I were someone listening to this and I said, Annie, I feel like I have that hunch too, and I feel it in my gut, it's kind of scary. What advice would you give me to pursue?
Yeah. I mean, a little is like lean into that if you can, lean into the discomfort. It doesn't mean that discomfort has to take over or that you have to make a decision right now. It's not, if you can go into it with trying to clear a mindset of like, I'm coming in to checking in with my body with an agenda to change it, to get rid of it, to fix it, just more of a curiosity of, okay, well, let's check in with that hunch, just listen to what it is trying to tell you. Doesn't mean you have to make a decision tomorrow. You just need to listen to what's going on and write that down or just pay attention to it and just take notice.
Beautiful. So we're going to end, Annie, with some lightning round questions.
Okay.
First question is chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Cooking or takeout?
Takeout.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
Climb a mountain.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Yes.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
Oh gosh. A very strong part of me wants to say 10, but probably more like a 3.
A recent book you've read?
What Alice Forgot.
What is your favorite way to practice self-care?
Doing mindfulness and also just regular massages, being able to find space for myself.
What's a good professional development you've done?
Internal family systems. Really been incredible.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
I love that. Confident, courageous, and just willing to shift perspective if you're feeling stuck.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't be so hard on yourself. Like, mistakes are okay. And honestly, if you listen, they're always going to teach you something.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a website and Facebook page. Mindful Therapy KC would be easiest way on all of them. They're basically all under that name. So you can find me anywhere there.
And last question, do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts with the audience?
I think just befriend your fears, befriend those things that show up that make you feel stuck.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie, so much for this conversation. I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.